K. Bannon.
In that state that, frankly, has enough to deal with, they are now facing a new challenge related to COVID. The Mississippi State Department of Health confirming today that, quote, at least 70% of the recent calls to poison control in Mississippi have been related to ingestion of livestock or animal formulations of ivermectin purchased at livestock supply centers. Ivermectin. Why are people taking livestock formulations of ivermectin in Mississippi? Ivermectin, livestock formulation, that's a horse dewormer. Literally, people won't take the vaccine because they're super suspicious of that, but they're taking horse deworming medication that they're buying at a feed store for COVID?
Okay.
Why on top of everything
the headline,
else?
this is Rachell Maddow. This is Rachell Maddow. Headline: the lead story in the CNN is not Afghanistan. It is that COVID reaches astronomical levels in Louisiana. These are all red states they're pointing to. The problem is the Surgeon General says we have a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and that the biggest threat we have out there right now is not the Delta variant. Nope. It is the misinformation that's spun by quacks like Dr. Vliet and Dr. Malone. So I want to go to you first. Counter, and by the way, it could be Dr. Vliet, Dr. Malone. Ivermectin is a anti-parasitic, I think, used by vets in horses. How did we get in the situation that we're purporting ivermectin and allowed us to be mocked and ridiculed by Rachell Maddow on her Friday night show? Dr. Malone.
So, Lee, thanks for letting me take that. I raise horses. The horse formulation and the cattle formulation, I strongly recommend that you do not use. The cattle is for injection. But what this shows is how desperate people are for early therapy. They're being blocked from getting access to early therapy, and they're resorting to extraordinary measures because their docs cannot prescribe it and the pharmacies won't fill it. But the evidence is clear, and I've used it myself, that ivermectin is potent. It's not a perfect drug, but when administered early, it can really mitigate disease.
Okay, Dr. Vliet, let me go to you. Maybe the point is that early therapeutics are not the solution, and that ultimately the solution is either herd immunity, which they don't count on anymore, or the vaccine. What say you, ma'am?
Early therapeutics have worked incredibly well. I didn't have a single patient I treated early go in the hospital or die. And that Rachell Maddow is uncomfortable in lying to the public that what she's saying, people are using horse medicine. They are the ones blocking the people from knowing the truth. They are censoring our effort to use an FDA-approved ivermectin prescription formulation for humans properly at the right dosage for people at the right time, and then claiming that we are the ones that are the problem. No, they are the ones that are a problem. They are costing lives with these lies and deception.
Okay, you showed me, you had something right there, Dr. Malone, you wanted me to see?
Yeah, can you tee up the Noble Lie slides from Slate?
Yes. So
I'd like to read a quote from Slate magazine, not known to be a radical right-wing publication.
It's not a MAGA publication, let's say this.
Exaggerating the risk of the virus in the moment and failing to explore middle ground positions is a reflexive attempt to vaccinate at all costs by creating fear in the public is a logical error called the fallacy of the excluded middle. Now, Peter Navarro and I, when we were on with you folks a few weeks ago, we made the point that there is a middle ground. There is an alternative strategy. It's the one being deployed in Sweden. It's the one that we should do. It's the ethical one. We need to allow people like Drs. Vliet and Tyson to practice medicine, to allow them to provide patients options other than go to the emergency room only when your lips are blue. Okay? If we administer early treatment, and this is being seen worldwide, including by these two very experienced physicians, by administering early treatment, we keep folks out of the hospital and keep them from dying. That's very clear, but you got to get it early.
Dr. Vliet, I know you're one of the tips of the spear here about the states have got to get more engaged here, and it's really at the state level. to not interfere in the doctor-patient relationship. How do people get to your site? How they find out more information about you? And we're obviously going to have you back on here, but walk people through this weekend, how they can get to you and how they can get up to speed on this.
Our website is truthforhealth.org. We are a public charity, and we are advocating for the public. We just did an international press conference on the vaccine threats to fertility with world-renowned scientists and physicians talking about the research that has been suppressed and known since 2012 at least. We have another press conference coming up on August the 26th, where we will be addressing additional issues with healthcare workers, talking about the problems they are having in treating patients and talking about the vaccine risk that's still being kept from the public awareness. We've got to focus on early treatment. That is what had worked all last year. Dr. Peter McCullough and his whole team led a research-based effort that has been extraordinarily successful. We must get that out to the public, and people need to stand up, get loud, and push back against these unconscionable and unconstitutional mandates for vaccination and interference with their right to work with their physician for the treatment based on their individual needs. It's freedom of choice.
Dr. Vliet, thank you very much. Honored to have you on here. By the way, in New York City, they've started this vaccine passport. You can't go to a grocery store. You can't go into a place to get a beer or eat. Only 29% of African Americans in New York City are vaccinated. You know why? They haven't seen the evidence yet. They have not. The case has not been made to the African American community in New York City. There's full access to the vaccine. They're vaccine hesitant for a reason. They're logical. They're rational, and they want to see the facts. Right? Not this kind of medical imperialism. Real quickly before I turn to Dr. Homer, did you ever think what's amazing me is because like I said, this is not my line of country, but I know who people that have reputations and experience. When I look at the level of quality of the people throughout the world, their reputations, etc., seeing them trashed by other members of their own profession. Did you ever think we'd get to this day? I mean, it's a firefight out there with some of the most greatest physicians in the world, and people just every day trashing them like their professional careers have meant nothing.
It's a concerted effort that's funded by Facebook and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which is J&J's major stockholder, and the Gates Foundation and another number of other large players that are pushing out these personal attacks through pop-up fact-checker sites. Peter and I had an attack on the Washington Times article. It was just intended to provide an alternate strategy.
They try to blow you guys up because that was a very powerful piece. We're going to put it back up today in the website. Okay, let's go to Dr. Homer. Dr. Homer joined us, a pathologist, joined us a couple weeks ago. Dr. Malone, you want to take it from here? We've got about 6 minutes in this segment. Dr. Homer will stay over us through the break.
Hi, Dr. Homer. You've given us a nice summary of kind of personal experience, walked us through that, and mapped it into the reality here. And it feeds in directly to the evidence that, for instance, the Pfizer vaccine durability is at best poor. And in your experience, it appears that it's 5 months, perhaps. Can you kind of carry us through what you've seen?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you, Dr. Malone, on the War Room. It's a real pleasure. Yeah, I have personal experience with this. My wife and I are vaccinated. We took a Johnson & Johnson vaccine middle of March. In May, I measured our spike protein antibodies. Now, I know the CDC says don't measure spike protein antibodies, but I'm a pathologist and I'm incorrigible, so I measured spike protein antibodies. And sure enough, we both had spike protein antibodies. This is the antibody that you ought to have after having taken a vaccine. So it worked, but I didn't stop there. I decided to measure again a few months later. So just a couple of weeks ago, I measured spike protein levels again, and mine are not detectable. I've got a vaccine card. I can go eat in one of those restaurants in New York City that folks who don't have a vaccine card can, but but I have no evidence of antibody-based immunity in my blood. And you know,
hang on a
I want
to hang on right a second, because this was Tony Fauci was on Andrea Mitchell 2 days ago, and she says, "Hey, I'm not a professional, but shouldn't we try to after you got the vaccine, test for the antibodies?" And he just goes, "Absolutely cannot happen. It's not efficient." I mean, he kind of freaked out. Is this why? Because he freaked out. Is this why?
We have no guidance in the medical community what antibody levels we ought to be looking at. What antibody levels might be too much. We're just told don't test. Take the vaccine, get the card. The card is what you need. And what I'm trying to say is the card is a silly piece of paper. The card doesn't mean what we think the card means. You know, we're dividing people not based on anything that's rational. We're dividing people on whether or not they have a card or not.
Okay,
and we have
hang on, on the FDA approval, please help me. Please tell me that in the approval process for the Pfizer, that one of the biggest tests is this thing right here, the antibodies after you've taken, and how the durability of the antibodies, they have to present to the public or to you in the scientific community exactly his point. Are there, and what Fauci was so freaked about, will they present what the antibodies are? Because that's the only thing that counts, correct?
Well, no, there's also cytotoxic T lymphocytes are also important, and innate immune responses. Dr.
But
Homer
if you don't,
knows this very well.
but if you don't have the antibodies, that obviates the other two.
That was
doesn't
the
it?
whole logic of the strategy with the spike protein, was to have inactivating or neutralizing antibodies against the receptor binding domain. Am I correct, Dr. Homer?
That's the
now
way I
we
understand.
We also earlier had a presentation, I think it was in the Forbes magazine, that the efficacy for blocking transmissibility is about 39%. So that further underscores your point. These, not only are the vaccine cards non-predictive for whether or not you're going to be potentially infected and shedding virus, but we know the basic protection rate from infection, replication, and shedding is less than 40%. We know that the titers, the level of virus in infected people that have been previously vaccinated, is at least as high, if not higher, than the people that were unvaccinated. Basically, Dr. Homer, what does this mean about the ability of the vaccine and the vaccination to predict whether or not you're going to be at risk for spreading virus to other people if you go into public places?
Well, I think I have to assume that I don't have a very robust immune response. I really don't know that for sure, but and like you say, the immune system's very complicated. I don't want to say that not having detectable antibodies is the same thing as not having immunity. The fact is we don't know, but we do know this data that's coming out of Israel right now. And Israel's, I think, a very good case study because it's a highly vaccinated country. And what they're finding is that the people that during this Delta wave, the people that took their vaccines early are being reinfected at a higher rate than people who took their vaccines later. Same vaccine.
And I'd like to segue. I'd like to segue to the other side on exactly that point. Are you ready to talk to us a little bit about antibody-dependent enhancement? I suspect as a boarded pathologist, you understand it.
We're going to come back. We're going to get right to that question. Short commercial break. Be back in the War Room. Dr. Homer, Dr. Malone, in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're going to go to Alabama in a moment. Live report for Ben Berquam. Mike Lindell's going to be there tonight. Make sure you support MyPillow, War Room, the manufacturing company, Mike Lindell. Go to mypillow.com. You got a square there. Promo code War Room. Sales on sheets, towels, toppers, all of it. Action, action, action. Do it today. Okay, Dr. Malone, this is very important. Give us that question again to Dr. Homer.
Dr. Homer, you're a board-certified pathologist. What are these dropping titers at 6 months or before? And this is a second vaccine now that you're discussing. What do they mean?
Well, I'll tell you how they're going to be interpreted. They're going to be misinterpreted. They're going to be interpreted as reason that we all need boosters. But that's not the message that we should be taking from what we're seeing. The message that we should be taking is that the eradication of the virus is not possible with these kinds of leaky vaccines. Time's going to prove that correct. We need a clear, sensible, achievable objective in this war on the pandemic. And until we have that, we're going to have chaos.
Real quickly, Doctor, because we're going to have you guys back on this too big a topic, particularly with FDA approval. What would be that? Do you have an idea what that strategy would be if this is not the one to pursue? What would it be?
It's the one that Dr. Tyson said. He didn't have a single death. We need to be keeping people alive. We need to be, and once you suborn vaccination and universal vaccination to the goal of keeping people alive, then it becomes a useful tool. And we can do exactly what Dr. Malone has laid out in his piece with Dr. Navarro. We can use the vaccines to protect those that are most susceptible, and we can not put pressure on this virus to mutate in the way that it's mutating right now. I mean, I think what we're seeing out of Israel is really scary. And, Dr. Malone can explain about ADE in ways that I can't. But what I can do is look and see the people who were vaccinated early, those early adopters. They're not only having more infection rates, but Dr. Lewinsky, even, director of CDC, said that they are having more serious disease. That's scary.
Dr. Homer, how do people get to you? How do they follow you during the working week?
Our website is betterpathology.com, and I'm Kevin Homer, MD, on Getter, Twitter, other places.
Okay, we'll get that in live chat. Sir, thank you very much. Real quickly before we go to Alabama, what about this AD? What Israel? What he says you would be able to define it. Tell us what's the issue.
So the vaccine, there are many mechanisms that some vaccines can cause enhanced disease. We spoke about this in the opening, and we spoke about it with Peter. And the biggest window for one of those key mechanisms, antibody-dependent enhancement, the biggest window for risk is when the vaccine titers are dropping. So what it suggests is the possibility that we may have enhanced disease and enhanced replication starting at about 5 to 6 months after receiving shots. And there is emerging information in the Israeli database suggesting that might be the case. And then we had this recent bombshell that was dropped by the CDC but kind of buried under the lead, that they're seeing increased disease in people that have been vaccinated at 6 months prior.
That's the presentation. Okay, we're going to have you. By the way, Monday, the FDA is going to, looks like the New York Times is reporting they're going to formally approve the Pfizer vaccine, formal FDA approval, which is going to be a game changer. Let's go real quickly to Ben Berquam, our investigative reporter, Real America's Voice. Real America's Voice will be covering this for multiple hours. He's in Alabama, massive crowd. Ben, put us in the field out there. What's it like? What's happening? What are people saying?
Hey, Steve, we're down here, obviously Alabama, big state for President Trump. We've got the Front Row Joe's guys, huge flags behind us. They've been lined up for days. The line goes all the way down to where they're going to be screening. It comes around the corner here. They're expecting, the numbers I've heard, between 20 and 30,000. It could be more. Could be a muddy mess, but everyone that I've talked to said they don't care, rain or shine. This is the place to be, and for a number of reasons. This is Alabama was where President Trump held his first rally in 2015. It's also where this district, the 4th Congressional District, is where he got the highest vote percentages for both 2016 and 2020. And with everyone speculating on President Trump making an announcement soon, it's no wonder that he's here. And I think with what's going on in Afghanistan, with our open borders that we've been showing, just the total overrun that we see going on at our borders, and the ineptitude of this current regime, people are hungry for it. People all over, not just Alabama, but all over the South. I spoke to somebody from New York who came down just for this. Yeah.
Okay, by the way, it's going to be on Getter. You're going to have all types of content. Real America's Voice coverage is going to start when? I know the president takes the stage, I think, scheduled at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I think it's 7 p.m. local time. When is the Real America's Voice coverage start, Ben?
Last I heard, we're going to be live at 5, so we're talking 5 o'clock Eastern. So we're talking lots of coverage. We're going to be talking to folks on the ground. We're going to be bringing it to you, the people, where they came from, why they're here, why it's important to them, what they want to hear. 5 o'clock Eastern time. We're here with the Save America Freedom Tour bus as well. It's going to be an awesome day.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much. Live report from Alabama, from where it's
Thank
going to
you,
be a
sir.
Mo Brooks rally. President Trump, but I got to tell you, it's going to be big. This is a very important speech. He's going to have a lot to say. He started today by saying there needs to be new leadership in the White House. He started the week by saying Joe Biden needs to resign. Captain Bannon, what are your coordinates? I know you're going to be on Getter tonight. What are your coordinates? People can keep up with you during the day of all the breaking news you're putting out about Afghanistan.
On Instagram at Real Maureen Bannon, and on Twitter and Getter at Maureen_Bannon. And I just want to address one last thing. In that Pentagon brief, they're putting out that 2,500 Americans have been evac'd. Joe Biden in his briefing said 169. It just shows that this regime in the White House does not have any idea how many Americans have been properly evac'd from this country, from Afghanistan.
Okay, very good. I knew you had to come with a little heat for that. Dr. Malone, honored to have you on here. Fantastic. We got to have you back on Monday. How big a day? 30 seconds. How big is this FDA approval on Monday? What happens?
I think it's going to trigger a whole storm, because now the gloves are off. They can impose mandatory vaccination on hospitals, universities, etc., as soon as they have an approved product.
The firestorm's about to start. We told you it's going to be around August 15th. Late couple of days, because now it's going to start. They understand the women in this country are standing up about their kids. Medical workers are standing up. Doctors, some of the best doctors in the nation, are standing up. Now the fight really starts Monday when the FDA approves it. Dr. Malone, look forward to having you back on the show. You're become, and that's not a national hero. You've become an international hero in this. So we thank you so much. Okay, make sure you turn back in 5 o'clock Eastern. We're going to start coverage, Real America's Voice, of this amazing, very important speech tonight by Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. We'll see you Monday, 10 a.m., back in the War Room.